of allegiance. So, Ms. Martinez, we may have to do a manual. Okay, there we go. All right. Roll call. I think we need a couple more.
All counselors present and the quorum has been declared.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Martinez, and thank you, council and staff and our audience for joining us for the first meeting of the year of 2023. Happy New Year to everyone. The first thing on our agenda is the agenda approval. Councilor Beal.
Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, please start voting. Okay,
The motion carried unanimously.
okay, thank you. That brings us to the next item on the agenda is citizen comment. This is the portion of the agenda to where we ask anyone who's in the audience who would like to say a few words. We have a card that you fill out. I have a card here from Don Melgares. If you wouldn't mind, come up to the podium. We do ask that you keep your comments to within 3 minutes. If you're still talking at the 3-minute mark, I will politely ask you to end your comments at that time. We'll start with Ms. Melgares first, and then we'll go to the participants on Zoom. Go ahead.
Thank you and good evening. I just wanted to come by as the director of the Housing Coalition and thank the city for their support in our effort to purchase the Century Mobile Home Park. We were successful at purchasing on Thursday, the 29th. We officially took over on Tuesday and have started working with staff and residents. It's been a little bumpy because the sellers did not turn over rent rolls and that sort of stuff that they were supposed to, but the staff stayed on with us to help us get through transition. And we've already started rehabbing some of the units that weren't being rented, and we'll hopefully have 3 to 4 new units ready for rent before the month's over. And have already started writing grants for the sewer system and replacement or bringing in new homes as well. And we feel it's going to take us about a 6-month transition to get things figured out and kind of work through the processes of owning a mobile home park, which we've never done before. But we feel we have a great staff and it's gonna go well. We had about 20 residents show up on my first day at the office just to introduce themselves and thank us for what we've done and for being able to save the park, and have even had some from the other mobile home parks reach out and ask that if theirs go back up for sale, if we would be able to do the same for them. So I think it's going to be a success for our community. And thank you again for your support. We ended up borrowing about $60,000 to cover closing costs and to get that just initial little bit into the bank to start operating until we start collecting rent. And we've been very thankful for that assistance.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Zoom. And it doesn't look like we have any attendees on here. But just in case, if you could give instructions. 0.
Okay, if you're on the Zoom app, you'll use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of your screen to let us know you want to speak. And if you're on a telephone, you'll dial *9.
Okay, I don't see any attendees, so we'll go ahead and close this portion of the agenda and bring it back to staff for comments.
I think I said a lot the last time Dawn was here, but just, for having such a small staff, it is amazing what that housing coalition does. And the learning curve and, of learning what the laws are at the state and how to navigate that and all of the outreach to make sure people were informed and knew what they were voting on and always being focused on making sure it's what the group wanted. And so it's been amazing working with Dawn, and I'm excited for all the potential projects that we have coming up.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, that brings us to the next item on the agenda, consent calendar A. Counselor Griego,
I'll make a motion, we accept consent calendar as presented.
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, please start voting. It's working now. There we go.
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, up next on the regular business, we have the homeless coalition update.
Is that right? Okay. I'm Donna Weehee, and I work at San Luis Valley Health as the Director of Communications. I sit on several boards in the community, and one of them is the Alamosa City Homeless Coalition Council. Council?
Sure.
Sure, we'll call it that. And Counselor Daniel and Counselor Griego also attend the meetings, which we are very much appreciative of. And Heather Brooks helps us with our agenda and helps us stay organized. And her staff reminds us of when the meetings are and aren't. And some fellow council members came with me tonight, Sienna and Dawn and Lance and Vern. And Vern is one of the county commissioners, and we really appreciate his presence as well. So I think there's about 15 all on the council representing all different kind of walks of life, and representing, like Rob Orendorff represents like the faith community. So it's really great input and a nice variety of people that show up and discuss a very difficult subject, one that we are not going to solve tonight. So I'm here to give the update. We've been meeting now for, I want to say about a year and a half. And we meet monthly. And we created a matrix that identifies organizations and services compared to the different populations. So it's a pretty complicated matrix. So we kind of put different groups of people like youth or veterans or, maybe substance use disorders, all in different buckets, and then went across all the different organizations and said, who serves this group with what type of service, from transportation to housing to food to clothing to counseling. So a lot of different categories.
And you can't read it, but I did put it as a visual
Okay,
for
yeah.
everybody to see
Yeah.
how big and
Yeah,
complicated
it's
it
pretty
is.
big. It kept getting bigger and bigger. And, we had homework to do to help fill in those gaps, but we all learned from each other. So we'd come back to the next meeting and then report out and say who was doing what. And we learned about our own organizations along the way and what we're doing or not doing. And it does provide a lot of information about all the organizations and services. And just on a side note, there was a nursing student who wanted to focus on healthcare for the homeless as part of his bachelor's kind of capstone project. And he picked this topic, and I sent him the matrix, and he was overwhelmed. He said, I didn't realize how much was going on behind the scenes. And he's also gotten involved. So the council group, also the process of creating those two documents led into a lot of discussion and identification of gaps. So high level, here's some of the gaps. I'm just going to go down the list. The first is housing. And along with housing, there's a lot of different categories, and I'm going to come back to that. There's case management, mental health outreach, And for anyone that requires a state ID or anything, types of, it's sort of a barrier not to have one. It can be challenging because a lot of them don't have an address. They can't even get that far, such as applying for Medicaid, getting a job, applying for housing. They can't open a bank account. And sometimes there's long wait lists for veterans. And this area also does not have an inpatient substance use facility. So going back to housing, circling back to housing, you've heard a lot about housing because this city and county, I feel, especially my work with the city, really does focus on the housing and preventing people from becoming homeless is a big thing that La Puente does. A lot of people just think it's a soup kitchen or a homeless shelter, but the prevention services that they do is amazing. So back to housing. Zero availability of single units and long wait lists. There's local hotels that won't rent to anyone locally. Landlords may not be interested in vouchers. Those with criminal backgrounds or have no way to show how they will pay rent are impossible to get into housing. Another group that you might not be thinking about is the youth that age out of foster care. They're often a neglected group in this, in the whole society of the whole system of no help. Immigrants and undocumented individuals, there's not enough shelter beds, and especially during the pandemic when public health put a restriction on how many La Puente was able to take in. And we need housing retention services. So it doesn't always work to give somebody from a homeless situation a house and then give them the key and walk away. They need a lot of wraparound services. More recently, the group has begun looking at what other communities are doing, as well as what resources and networking is going on at the state level. So what's interesting is that when Christina and Heather went to a different meeting, they could bring back different resources and ideas and also share ours, what we're doing out with the rest of the state. The project to move the soup kitchen and build affordable housing is a good project, and it's in line with the needs and gaps identified by the coalition. We spent a lot of time discussing it. If nothing else, it's a good sounding board for making some of these big decisions. And so that's what the coalition has been really, I think, valuable at doing. And the whole coalition, Lance especially, we were just talking about how much we want to thank City Council for just being progressive enough to create this coalition, to be thoughtful, to look for solutions, to bring people together around the table. It's a huge starting point, so we can talk to the police, we can talk to the outreach coordinator, we can find out what the issues are. It's important to have this group looking objectively and identifying needs, and especially one that so broadly represents the citizens of Alamosa. And it's important to provide education to the public and dispel myths. And the group wants to keep working on this with different types of educational outreach, and all the members have felt like they have learned a lot. And if I missed anything that any of the council members would like to add, do you want to come up to the microphone? Kind of hit the highlights? Okay. Any questions or comments?
Okay, thank you so very much. We'll open it up for council to make comments. Thank you, Ms. Weehee. Council Griego.
Yes, in working with this group, they're quite dedicated, trying to put together that matrix took a lot. And like you said, everybody did their homework, and it took a lot, and all these different meetings that these people have attended, you could tell they care of putting this thing together and making sure it works for the homeless. So I applaud them, all this work that you guys have done it's incredible, and hopefully be a tool that not only we can use, but other communities are going to see how we put this thing together and probably copy part of what we were doing. So thank you so much to the group.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're
I agree with Councilor Griego. I think this has been a true pleasure to sit on this community group and to support the conversations and to just hear where everyone's passions are and really talk through where the challenges are and it be an open forum to have that discussion. We have so many different organizations and people and services represented, that I feel like we are getting a really good mix of what's actually available, and then having the hard conversations that need to be had and being able to take those and move them forward. And so it's just been really exciting to be a part of those conversations. And I just really appreciate all of the energy. I mean, we've been meeting every single month, and people come and their homework is usually done. It's not always done, but usually done. And we're there until 7:30, and we have like long conversations and good conversations. And I've really appreciated that.
Thank you.
And I'll just wrap things up. It's so good to see you and your council members up here
Yeah.
today and showing that support and seeing that you have people from different parts of the community.
Yeah.
And also at this time, we always like to recognize an elected official when they come into our chambers, and we want to recognize County Commissioner Vern Hersing.
Yay.
Thank you for your service. But thank you, Ms.
Yeah,
Weehee,
you
for all
know,
your
Mayor,
efforts.
not a lot of towns are this active in doing these types of things. And so, and I think that you all personally have been criticized by people of the community who say, quit spending our taxpayer money on the homeless. We don't want to make it too easy for them. And it's just going to keep getting tougher with the way Excel rates are going up. And it's not always the people who are addicted to drugs. A lot of times it's the working families that just can't make it, and they start by couch surfing, and it can go downhill from there. So it's many walks of life that this affects. And I think that we're too quick to judge sometimes. And so I really appreciate you guys sticking to your guns when you've been criticized for this support too.
One more comment, if I may, Mayor.
Sure, Councilor Griego.
Counselor Daniels touched on the various different people on this board.
Yeah.
One of the dedications I saw was this young lady that represents the high school.
Yep, Sienna.
And she's always been there, and her input and stuff, you know, to have the youth involved in something like that for the future is something
Yeah.
great, you know? So that just speaks volumes.
It does. It speaks volumes because the youth are affected by homelessness. The teachers, the counselors, social services, it affects every walk of life. And I think it's been eye-opening, huh, Sienna? Yeah. Thank you.
But thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to the next item on the agenda. Quarterly update on housing and downtown.
Good evening, members of council, and happy new year. So this is our first quarterly update for 2023, although really we're covering back to the beginning of October. So we have hit the trail running for the Hunt Avenue Cultural Trail. It's just kind of slow motion. The contracts take a while with major projects for C.2.a, but we did have the scoping meeting with their engineers and their environmental specialists, some of their historic specialists. So there's going to be a lot of hoops to jump through, but it's, $1.2 million and no match. So we're excited anyway. We've started the contract process, and the next time I'm before you, we will start the IGA process so that we can continue to work with them. The 4th Street parking lot, which is the one behind the old JCPenney's, that went out to bid on December 5th. I had to do a couple revisions because concrete and asphalt are kind of complicated, and Public Works was very generous in teaching me things that I did not necessarily know, but I'm learning. And we've had a fair amount of interest. I think just about every contractor in town is going to bid on the project. The Walsh demolition continues to be the gift that keeps on giving. So phase 1 environmental study is done. We have a quote for the phase 2 environmental study, but it's almost 20,000. So we're trying to see if there's avenues for the state CDPHE or the EPA to help us with the phase 2 environmental. And then we also completed a major spill report, which in essence is just saying that the whole site is contaminated with asbestos. And I know that sounds really scary, but in some ways it opens funding opportunities for us that we wouldn't have otherwise. We received our first draft of a new downtown banner design. The Main Street Committee is working on getting new banners that are larger and brighter and really, describe a sense of place. Like, this is Alamosa, this could only be Alamosa. Our first draft is a little weird because it's a squiggle, but it's supposed to be the river, but we're gonna keep working on it. It's still pretty, it's just a squiggle though. We also had kind of a promising pre-development meeting for a potential commercial kitchen downtown, which is something we need. So next, okay, so this is kind of the funding stuff. So usually when I talk to CDPHE, it's scary, but they have an arm of CDPHE that I never knew about before where they just want to throw money at you. They don't necessarily have any money, but they really are great partners. And it's a really nice arm of the state health department that they want to work with small communities. And so the fact that the entire Walsh site is contaminated with asbestos, because I have some lovely photos I could show you of all the floors collapsing on one another, and how much debris there is. It actually makes us eligible to get funds, not just for abatement, but also for demolition, which in the past we would have only been able to get funds for the abatement itself, and the demolition would have still been on the city. So there's a chance that because it's kind of an emergency project, because it's an imminent risk to public safety, that the EPA, the CDPHE is kind of negotiating for us, but the EPA might be able to step in and actually help us with the whole project. So I think that was like the Christmas miracle I was hoping for, was that the EPA steps in. They're under new management, so we're still waiting to hear back, but it is very promising. So we did a community builders workshop before I ever worked for the city, actually, but with the city in 2020. It was part of those things where I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to work with those guys someday. And they're a great organization, they're a planning organization, and they actually are the outreach arm of CDPHE's asbestos program. So we've been meeting pretty regularly with the Brownfields Partnership, and they're just helping us with all kinds of leads, and they're the ones that would help us find someone to do the phase 2 environmental work. So instead of it being 16,000, it would be 0. So those are the kind of things we're working on for the Walsh. I know it's a slow process, but we are making progress. Outreach and relationships, met with the ASU art professors again about doing a collaboration on murals downtown. It's getting a little bit hard to find funding for murals. I really love our first one, but our last couple grant applications haven't been successful. So hopefully we can just get, free art students and they can do wonderful things downtown. And then also just last week, an article ran about all the exciting things we're doing downtown in the Citizen. And they quoted me directly, which if I'd known they were going to do that, I wouldn't have written quite so technically. I'm sorry. We're still working on a weekly basis, if not more, with CRHDC for Tierra Azul. Right now we're we're well into the PUD process. So much so that we actually did a work session with our planning commission, making sure they know what the planned unit development process is going to look like. It's a very involved process. CRHDC's brought on an extra team of experts just to work on this application. And so it's really diving down into the details and trying to negotiate some of the finer points of this development and all 6 phases of it that will happen over the next 10 to 15 years. We did make it through the pre-development meeting with our lovely new fire chief and our public works director. So hopefully that stands at least for the first 2 phases. This is since October. So I will tell you that we aren't eligible to apply for this. I'll start with the bad news. The good news is that we made it into the interview round for the $3 million for IHOY. And the only reason that we didn't make it into the application round is because we are also applying for LIHTC funding, the low income housing tax credit funding for CRHDC's Tierra Azul project. And so because it's a relatively small pot of money and they need projects that are really shovel ready, the only reason that they told us they want us to wait till the next round is to try to secure our LIHTC. And so these processes are happening simultaneously. We're also being interviewed with CHAFA, some of the higher ups with CHAFA that run the LIHTC program to see if we're eligible for 9% LIHTC. So it's kind of a chicken or an egg, but we're working through it. I mean, it's still our most viable housing project in terms of creating 406 homes. And then also we've been meeting pretty regularly with the Housing Coalition and the USDA and other partners on Friday. So it has to be on next quarter's report, but Harry and I are going out to start the preliminary engineering process for the sewer system at the mobile home park. So we're doing the project management on that. Harry's graciously offered all his time to help us. We kind of voluntold him, but He's gonna help us figure out the sewer for that, mobile home park, because it is the city's most affordable housing, which I think we all know. And then outreach and developments. I did not attend the Housing Colorado conference, even though I was supposed to, but I had someone attend for me, and he's far more charming and knows more about beer. So he met a lot of great people, and I don't know if our council really understands how amazing the things that you do in terms of housing are. But we're a player on the state scene because Alamosa is brave enough to do things that other communities aren't. And we are being so aggressive and so forward about housing and being so aware. Like Deacon came back from this conference, and I've been telling him, like, this is stressful and painful because we're so far ahead of the curve. And he came back and he's like, I had no idea, like, these huge communities that have millions and millions of dollars and dedicated housing departments, they're nowhere near where we are. And I really have to credit council for that vision of needing to fill that housing gap in our community and make sure that there's housing all across the income spectrums. And then we just continue to court any developers we can. Tried to steal that one that's building in East Alamosa, but I think he's going to keep building in East Alamosa. Maybe we can get him to build here too. But having some really promising conversations, like with the hospital, about the housing for their staff and maybe some other opportunities. So it was supposed to be quiet around the holidays, but it really wasn't. So I'm excited. I think that bodes well for the new year. That's all I've got.
Good
And
job, good job. There are gonna be some questions for you. Counselor Carson?
What's a commercial kitchen?
So it's like they have one in Moscow. So the Valley Roots Food Hub is where you can rent out space. And so like makers can have a commercial kitchen that's licensed and be able to make food stuff, so they're not making them in their homes. And so you not only have access to like commercial grade appliances, but also you have all the health gradings and all the inspections by the health inspector that you wouldn't get if you had a kitchen at home. So it's a great way to incubate little businesses. And it's something Kathy's been working on for a long time.
Thank you.
Counselor Grego?
Along that same question, where is this gonna be located at?
The sale hasn't really gone through.
It's kind of confidential.
Yeah. I have high hopes though. Sorry. It's exciting.
Rachel, I want to thank you and your team for being proactive and very resourceful. You all are making a huge positive difference in our community. And fortunately, I was able to go to that housing conference, and I believe Don was there, and we saw Deacon laying down the charm on everybody, so to make sure that we can continue to get those grants and things. So I can vouch for him.
It's basically all him.
But thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. That brings us to the next item on the agenda. Public hearing and second reading for ordinance number 27-2022, an ordinance incorporating and adopting certain provisions of HB 21-1162 concerning bag fees.
Hello, Mayor. We spent time discussing this at the last meeting, and since we're past January 1st, I think a lot of the community is aware of some of the changes that happened at the state level regarding chains for stores and all restaurants on using plastic bags and the 10-cent fee, as well as how they're going to be eased out by 2024. Essentially, what this ordinance does is just adopt it also into our municipal ordinance. So if we get a complaint, we can look into it. It's probably going to be a conversation. That's usually what we do. But if the store refuses to comply, then we do have a mechanism through municipal court, as well as making sure that if they are collecting it, that they're remitting the 60% to the city. So nothing beyond anything that the state's already put in.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brooks. I'll go ahead and open it up for a public hearing and second reading for ordinance number 27-2022, an ordinance incorporating and adopting certain provisions of HB 21-1162 concerning back fees. I'll first open it up for anyone who's in the audience who would like to make any comments at this time. Please come up to the podium and voice your concerns. Okay, I don't see anyone in the audience who is coming up to the podium. So now I'll go to Zoom to ask those participants who would like to make any comments regarding this hearing to raise your hand so we can recognize you. Ms. Martinez, I don't see any hands raised. So,
I don't see any either, Mayor.
okay, so I'm gonna close the public hearing and bring it back to council for comments. We'll start it off with Counselor Vio.
No comments, Mayor. I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead,
I
Council.
move to approve ordinance number 27-2022, an ordinance incorporating and adopting certain provisions of HB 21-1162 concerning back fees.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Counselor Griego?
One more comment, the people that are supposed to collect this, they are aware of it, I believe. So,
Yes, not only have we done education, but Kathy's been hand delivering the letters and
Okay, good.
information.
all right, thank you.
Okay, please start voting. Ms. Martinez?
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you, council. Up next on the agenda, resolution number 2-2023, third budget amendment for 2022 annual budget.
Happy New Year, Council
Happy New
and
Year.
Mayor. I
Yeah.
always hate this microphone. I fight with it every time. This is such a simple resolution and Don made my job really easy because there's only one item on it, the approval of the $60,000. If you remember in December when we did our second budget amendment, that was an outstanding item as the Housing Coalition and Don were working frantically to get all the grants and the funding in place. So we weren't sure how much it was going to be. So 60,000 is what we ended up spending and we need to approve that for our 2022 budget. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lisa. Okay, that brings us to Counselor Carson.
Mayor, nobody has anything else to say. I'd just recommend that I'd make a motion that we approve resolution 2-2023, third budget amendment for 2022 annual budget.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, start voting.
Should I abstain? Yes. Okay.
Okay, Ms. Martinez?
The motion carried unanimously with Counselor Daniel abstaining from the vote. Oh, Counselor Hensley abstaining from the vote.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Lisa.
Quick and easy. Thank
All
you.
right, appreciate that. Moving right along, council. All right, that brings us up under city manager legal, a motion authorizing the sponsorship of $5,000 to 7 entities in varying amounts as detailed in the council communication.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
So the process that council set up to make sure we kind of knew which entities were going to be needing funding is to take the annual 10,000, divide it in half and do a process where they fill out an application and we divvy up 5,000 for the first half and 5,000 for the second half. The sponsorship committee, which is comprised of Counselor Vigil and Counselor Carson, did meet and review those applications. And the recommendation that they have made is to fund the Cinco de Mayo block party at 2,000 plus use of the stage, to fund Alamosa Roundup at 1,950 plus use of the stage and tent, the Roland Deep Car and Bike Show for $600 plus use of the stage, to fund the first annual First Responders Appreciation Event at $200, to fund the Feel the Rhythm, a music therapy exercise group of $50, the ASU RMAC Championship Indoor Track and Field Meet at $200, and then the National Sport Rocket Launch requested use of the tent. And with that, it's before council for discussion and a vote.
Okay, council, any comments? Counselor Griego?
I think they're doing a good job and I'm ready to make a motion that we approve the sponsorship for 5,000 for the 7 entities.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I just want to thank Counselor Vigil and Counselor Carson for taking the time to make sure that all of the organizations that were applied received some funding that met the criteria.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick comment. I think I'll speak on behalf, but I'm just glad that we're able to throw money at a bunch of different groups and events. And we talked that the Cinco de Mayo block party has been such a big success and it highlights culture and that kind of thing. So that's why we went so much on that. But Mike, anything?
Just thank you guys for the support and for backing us up on it. It's a good spread of the money.
Good job. Okay. All right, no more comments. Please start voting. Ms. Martinez?
The motion carried unanimously.
Good. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, public hearing and second reading for ordinance number 2022, an ordinance amending the frequency of pay for city employees set out in section 15-3 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Alamosa.
Mayor, as we discussed on first reading of this ordinance last year, this is purely a housekeeping ordinance to bring our ordinances in line with our current pay practices. They are different. The ordinance says pay the attorney and the judge monthly. Practices, they're employees and paid bi-monthly, just like every the other employee. So one or the other must change. And the recommendation is to make the ordinance conform to standard city practice.
Thank you, Mr. Sweezel. Appreciate it.
I'd be very
So-
surprised if there are any comments on this one, but there may be from the
See?
public.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open up the public hearings for the second reading and ordinance number 24-2022, an ordinance amending the frequency of pay for city employees set out in section 15-3 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Alamosa. Have anyone in the audience who would like to make any comments in regard to this during this public hearing time? Please come up to the podium. Okay, I don't see anyone in the audience coming up to the podium, so now we will go to Zoom and ask any attendees if you would like to make any comments at this time. Please use the raise your hand feature and raise your hand. Ms. Martinez, I don't see any hands raised.
I don't see any hands raised either, Mayor.
So I am going to close the public hearing and turn it back over to council for comments or to make a motion. Councilor Daniel?
Thank you. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Okay, if not, please start voting.
The
Okay, Ms.
motion carried unanimously.
You're right, Mr. Sweezel, no comments. All right, that brings us to the next item. Public hearing and second reading for ordinance number 25-2022, an ordinance amending Alamosa's section 11-62 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Alamosa concerning harassment.
Again, Mayor and Council, this, as discussed on first reading, is pretty much of a housekeeping ordinance. It's got a little bit more substance to it. There are two provisions in our current harassment ordinance that have been held by the state counterpart to those provisions have been held by the Colorado Supreme Court to be unconstitutional. One of those court decisions was way back in 1990 something, and we've carried it on the books despite that ever since. The other was just last year, another provision in the state counterpart held to be unconstitutionally vague. So this ordinance removes those two, which you won't find in the state counterpart anymore. Also addresses a couple other things, taking out rude and obscene gestures as harassment. Flipping someone the bird has not been enforced in my tenure as city attorney anyway. And then adding other forms of remote communication to what can constitute harassment. Right now, our harassment statute or ordinance talks about telephone harassment, but doesn't talk about texts or emails or other kinds of remote communication, which is, as you all know, a large forum for harassment that goes on these days. So that's sort of updating, housekeeping, weeding out old stuff so that we don't unintentionally convict somebody of an ordinance violation that's unconstitutional. and then kind of modernizing some of the other provisions of the harassment ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we'll open up the public hearing for the second reading of ordinance number 25-2022, and ordinance amending Alamosa section 11-62 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Alamosa concerning harassment. We have anyone in the audience who would like to make any comments during this public hearing? Please feel free to come up to the podium at this time.
I just have a question, actually. I wanted to know what the broad scope of that harassment ordinance is and how an individual can tap into that information for their own purposes or questions.
Okay.
Mayor, we don't generally engage in back and forth because we can devolve
that's
quickly into 10-hour meetings.
I
But I will
understand.
say that the harassment ordinance is on the city website in the materials for this meeting.
Is there, it says website, so what about if you can't get on the website and you need something?
You
uh,
can, so
documented?
So for informational, if we're done with the public hearing, then I can answer the question on how to get information, but let's make sure there's no other questions and we don't get into back and forth, and then I can answer the questions.
Sure, and I apologize, but we don't usually have dialogue back and forth during the public hearing, but we have written down the question that you have. And after we close the public hearing, we'll make sure we answer the question for you or
Okay.
get the
I just
information
wanted-
to you.
I just
Okay?
wanted to know where I
Okay.
could get
Sure,
access.
we'll relay that information to you.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you, thank you. Anyone else in the audience who would like to make any comments at this time? Okay, so we'll go to Zoom and see if there's any attendees here in Zoom who would like to make any comments. If so, raise your hand by using the raise your hand feature. Ms. Martinez, I don't see any hands raised.
I don't see any hands raised either, Mayor.
Okay, good. So we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. And once again, I apologize. My apologize. We haven't had people speak in a while, so.
So depending on how a person feels the harassment might be occurring, if it's a lower level and they just want to understand what this ordinance is and what harassment's defined as, yes, it is on the city website as you could search through Code of Ordinances, or you could also search on this agenda. It's attached to this agenda. If individuals don't feel comfortable accessing it through the website, they can always call or come to the city clerk's office and request a copy of it. And the clerk's office can provide a copy of an ordinance. If someone feels that they are definitely being harassed and it feels like a little higher urgency than trying to research it on their own, they are always welcome to contact the police department as well to explain what their situation is.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks, for clarifying all that for us.
And
Okay.
don't we also keep a hard copy of the ordinances somewhere at City Hall? Yeah. In the clerk's office?
Thank you. Okay, Counselor Grigg.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I'll go ahead and make the motion that we approve ordinance number 25-2022.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, please start voting. Ms. Martinez?
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay, that brings us to the next item, a public hearing and second reading for ordinance number 26-2022, an ordinance providing for all property-related charges to create a lien on property and to be certified to the county treasurer for collection pursuit of CRS 31-20-105.
Yet another housekeeping ordinance, council. This one came to light when we certified some costs that the city incurred in cleaning up a building that had been noticed as deficient under our property maintenance code. The owner didn't do anything about it. So we went in and did it ourselves or contracted, I don't remember which, and incurred the cost to bring that property into compliance. The county treasurer at the time raised a question of whether this was a charge that was certifiable for collection by the county treasurer as taxes are collected, which this statute provides for. And we were able to satisfy her that it was. But that raised the question in my mind, do we have other things that aren't? And so we have some code provisions that specifically say this, if the city incurs charges, it's a lien on the property and collectible by the treasurer. We have others that just say it's a lien on the property. We have some that don't say anything at all about how we go about getting repaid for city expenditures. So this ordinance clarifies that any expenditure that we do having to do with real property and code compliance is a lien on the property and collectible by the county treasurer if we certify it as taxes.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing and second reading for ordinance number 26-2022, an ordinance providing for all property related charges to create a lien on property and to be certified to the county treasurer for collection pursuit of CRS 31-20-105. We have anyone in the audience who would like to make any comments at this time, please do so by coming up to the podium. Okay, I don't see anyone in the audience coming up to the podium, so Ms. Martinez will go to Zoom. And if we have any attendees who would like to make comments in regards to this ordinance, please raise your hand by clicking on the raise your hand feature. I don't see any hands raised, Ms. Martinez.
I don't see any either, Mayor.
So I'll bring it back to council for comments and or motion.
I'll make a motion that we pass ordinance number 26-2022.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, please start voting. Okay, Ms. Martinez.
The motion carried unanimously.
Righty, that brings us to the next item on the agenda. Public hearing and second reading for ordinance number 23-2022, an ordinance amending the established pay plan for city officers and employees.
Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome.
This ordinance does two very different things. The first one, and it's a little more straightforward, is with a successful grant application for our co-responder program, we are able to, in addition to a second co-responder, hire a case manager. And so that position had not previously been included in the pay plan. So it does place that into the pay plan at grade F with a starting annual salary of $40,476. The second item that this ordinance addresses is shifting our street division positions. And we, for a while now, have been seeing significant issues in our street division. The turnover rate for that division of 8 FTEs is currently at 79.5%. It actually might be a little bit higher because we had another individual leave shortly after the last council meeting. With December's data still needing to be collected. The division currently has 3 vacant. It went to 4 out of the 8 FTE positions, and it's not been fully staffed since the third quarter of 2020. Since mid-2021, the city's advertised 8 times at a total cost of just over $2,000, but obviously the opportunity cost and the workload strain are much higher than that. So anytime we're seeing this type of specific issue, our compensation policy prompts us to do a market analysis. So even though we had just completed one last year, we did take a look. While we were talking to the consultant, they communicated that they've actually seen nationally a trend in this type of position shift dramatically. Once we took a look at all the comparables that we had used, we also did add CDOT. Several of the positions, almost all of them had to be moved up 1 to 2 grades. And so that's what this change does. There is a cost of $81,000 in salaries, as well as, if you think benefits, overhead, an additional $24,000. We have made cuts to offset some of those impacts of 106 is what the impact would be. We've identified cuts of about 72,900. It ranges all over the place. The larger ones, though, does include some reduction in the street division maintenance line item. I went over this last time, so I could skip this if you want. Okay. So cuts in other locations as well. And so I will say, since re-advertising, assuming council would approve this, we have received more interest in our vacancies and conditional acceptance while they are waiting for the final approval. And so I do think it is making a difference.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. So at this time, we'll open up the public hearing for the second reading of ordinance number 23-2022, an ordinance amending the established pay plan for city officers and employees. We have anyone in the audience who would like to make any comments at this time, please come up to the podium and do so. Okay, I don't see anyone in the audience who's coming up to the podium, so we'll go to Zoom and ask anyone who's attending to raise your hand by using the raise your hand feature at this time so we can recognize you. Ms. Martinez, I don't see any hands raised.
I don't see any hands raised either, Mayor.
So we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to council for comments and our motion. Councilor Beal.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we approve ordinance number 23-2022.
I do have one comment, Mayor. I want to thank the city staff for taking a hard look at this and making a decision that does benefit the employees at the end of the day. So thank you for doing that, and I second the motion.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further comments? All right. Please start voting.
The
Okay.
motion carried unanimously.
Okay. Council's doing a great job here tonight. We're all the way at the end of the agenda already almost. Committee reports. Have any committee reports, Councilor Griego?
I have one, the senior citizens had their Christmas bazaar, went pretty well. We had two winners from the family here. My wife won a quilt and Eric won a prize
Awesome.
too, so. But it did real good. And I want to thank Desiree for, she sends out the newsletter up for the senior citizens. There's a lot of information on there. We all get it, so look at that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Councilor Carson. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Hensley.
I went to the tree board meeting, and so that was really good. We have a CTC grant proposal, and we're looking for doing a tree replacement at Cole Park to replace some of those cottonwoods that are aging out there. So we did a little field trip, and we walked around and looked at the cottonwoods and looked at which ones and where we might put some. So that was fun, and it was good to go for a little walk in the brisk, cool air.
Ms. Hensley, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
On those cottonwoods, which ones are bad? How many are bad? What is it? What's the status out there?
So I don't have an exact number. I could probably get some. We did discuss them. There's some that are along the side here that are older. And so I think it's, when we were looking, it was funny because I asked some of the same questions. So as you're looking, you can kind of see which ones are looking older when you look at them. Andy, do you have an exact number? There we go.
The reason
I will just pass that right along.
The reason I asked that question is I've been hit up by a few constituents, kind of nervous on windy days and that if these are going to fall over. So.
Yeah, so, you know, they all are similar age, approximate age. So what we're looking at is probably focusing on the south end as at first because there's more gaps. But, you know, we rely on Adam, the state forester. And so he was out there on our tour. And this project will be about 15 or so trees that will focus on the south end. And then in a later grant, we'll go after the northern end. And it's not just cottonwoods because you have to look at species diversity. with pests and whatever. So there'll be some other trees too. But as our showcase park, and if all those trees are aging out together, you know, we're trying to be proactive and do it.
Andy, we also have a process too, don't we? Rely on Adam to kind of assess what the city's trees are, and if we need to do any pruning or do anything like that, we do look at trees. So if we felt
Yeah.
like there was a danger, we would be taking.
Yeah,
would
and
be-
more that's internal. I mean, Jeremy and his parks crew is doing that. And thank you. I didn't really address that, but yeah, no, we've been looking over there at, you know, any of those trees that are dangerous, and it's constantly being looked at. So I'm confident that we're okay there.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Carson?
Just a couple things to report on from the Council of Governments. We're moving forward with trying to negotiate or work through a template IGA. Eric's been involved in that process. We've just gotten rough drafts of it. And so we're working through that and trying to understand what, you know, what the different criteria should be and what we want to stay away from. We've also just went through a new, basically a rewrite of the contract and the agreement between the COG and the DRG with the broadband committee that looks much better. I'm a lot more comfortable with it personally, and I think it'll help make some good progress. The committee will do better things, keep doing good things, and I think it'll probably improve the outreach or should improve the outreach and, you know, give us opportunity to spend some of this money that's coming down the road. There is a lot of opportunity for funding to try to get, you know, everybody on the same page as far as internet and access to those kind of services. So the COG's doing a really good job of cleaning a lot of the relationships up that it can have and clearing up a lot of what, where the lines are drawn. And I think we're going to be using it a lot more in the future. It looks like we're trying to really leverage the ability of the COG to be a, you know, everything from a fiscal agent to, you know, pass-throughs. And so it's been cleaned up a lot of new board members. And so I think I'm feeling positive. It was feeling a little grim last year, but it's a lot better now. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor Carson.
And the roundtable, there's so much stuff going on at the roundtable right now that I'll just lay off it for a while because it could get into 10, 15 minutes. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Counselor Carson. Okay, Counselor Griego?
Yeah, I had a question for Counselor Carson. I got an email during the week that they had a Zoom meeting, Council of Government, on the transmitting.
Yeah.
Were you able to, I didn't know if you attended that or not. I wasn't able to attend it. It was sent by a commissioner, I think Espinoza.
Well, one of the things that's going on there is that now the state has reopened up the talks, and there's been a lot of forward movement in the conversation of transmission. We've had a lot of, you know, I think about 12 years ago, they tried to have a hard conversation and look at our redundancy. If we have a fire over Poncha Pass, you know, something serious, we could lose power here for days, even, you know, weeks, depending on how serious that is. We don't have a redundant link. So one of the things that's happening is that the state is finally taking a serious look at trying to help the community, the valley, build a redundant link. You know, we had a lot of talks when we were talking about the railroad, about going over to Vita Pass. Excel's done a lot to tighten up their transfer station in Pueblo. And so that has become kind of a less of a need. And we're looking at a serious, you know, really threatening drought at Lake Powell, Lake Mead. You know, they're getting near dead pull status, which means they won't be able to produce. I think Lake Mead is 1,000 megawatts of electricity towards the west. And so that leaves a huge gap there. And with some of the stuff that the district's doing and some of the other conservation entities with land, we're trying to leverage the ability for the valley to produce solar. And so those talks have really sparked this new conversation with the PUC to build a redundant link to the west, which would then be able to provide, you know, we could create a commodity here and retire some of this land from ag and save water and start producing solar and piping that over the West Mountains. So that's what that meeting was about. What we're trying to do is get all the entities, and we may talk about it here at the city, Eric, if you want to look into that, about writing a letter of support for this new COSA project and the PUC of different entities that just want to say, we want to be involved. We want to talk about it. It's just this, I don't have the acronym's name. They're calling it COSA. But again, it's the PUC really starting to engage with the communities, entities, all businesses of any type that you know that want to write a letter of support, just saying, you know, we're paying attention. We want to be involved in these conversations. And so that's what this meeting is particularly about. So I think the COG and the DRG, well, the COG is going to write a letter of support to be in that conversation. We did it at the district on Friday. We submitted, actually Friday was the deadline, but they're still taking letters. So I think we should look into that and probably think about doing that.
So it would
Thank-
probably
thank
be
you.
me you'd want to send that information to?
I'll forward it to you tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you, Council Carson. Thank you, Council Grego and Council Carson. All right, okay. I'll wrap things up. The Parks and Recreation Board met. We had Mr. Don Thompson come in and talk about the Zapata Park historic designation. We also discussed the Trails and Master Plan, got updates on that, updates on the pedestrian bridge in regards to some of the requirements for CDOT, as well as the 2023 CTC tree grant and other activities that are going on. Good thing about the Parks and Rec Department is continuing to grow and expand, and a lot of activities are going on, and a lot of the youth are showing up in large numbers. So keep up the great work. That's my committee report. You're welcome. Yeah, no worries, no worries. Okay, that brings us down to the next item on the agenda. Local liquor, I'm sorry, staff announcement. Sorry about that.
Ollie, did you want to do yours first?
Yeah, so after an annual election last year, so you guys choose a mayor pro tem. So last year in January, you guys decided to split the mayor pro tem, but for 1 year for each person. So last year was Councilor Daniel as the mayor pro tem, and this year would be Councilor Griego. So he would start mayor pro tem as of this meeting.
Yes, and I'd just like to make a comment. I purposely had both of them sit next to me tonight because I wanted to say a few good words about both of them. First of all, I want to thank Councilor Daniel for showing up and being a wonderful mayor pro tem, participating in events, activities, and being there and being present at a lot of events. I really greatly appreciate you filling in for me whenever I wasn't able to make it to meetings, as well as showing up and showing your support out there in the community. If I had a hat on, I would tip it to you, but I'm gonna ask everyone if we can give her a round of applause for the great job that she did. Thank you, thank you. And then I'd like to turn to Councilor Griego. Councilor Griego is in his 39th year as a council member. He's been doing, oh, you started your 40th. 40 years. Let's give him a round of applause. 40 years of being on council, and many of us often say, how in the world could you do it for so long? It's amazing. And we're really fortunate to have Councilor Griego to maybe finish up his last year. And Councilor Daniel was graceful to allow him to finish up his last year and split the term with him to be the mayor pro tem. And looking forward to seeing you serve in that role. And we're looking forward to you having a wonderful end to your much appreciated career. So, and if we could just gonna allow them to say a few words if they would like.
I guess I'll start because I really want to thank Chris, Mayor Pro Tem usually it's a 2-year deal, and for her to split it the way she did, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate that. And, for you to do something like that, it's incredible. I was probably being selfish by trying to ask for that, but for you to do that, it goes to see what kind of a person you are, as not just as an individual, but your council, what you do for the people and stuff. So thank you so much.
Well, gosh, so Councilor Griego, it wasn't a hard decision when you asked, and I just want to say that you've given so much time and care to the city, so that was really easy. So thank you though for that acknowledgement. I appreciate it, and I've just had a lot of fun. Mayor, you're pretty easy to cover for. So Councilor Griego, you have like an easy job this last year, but I've really had a lot of fun, and I really appreciated the faith that you had in me, Mayor, and it's just been a really cool thing, and I'm excited to have been able to serve that way. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And I'm thankful and grateful for both of you being a part of our team. And I always mention team, the acronym stand for, and it's all of the council member TEAM stands for Together, Everyone Achieves More. And we've been achieving a lot of great things working together. So keep up the great work, everyone. Thank you. Okay.
So we're not done with staff.
Oh.
That was
Okay,
just
that's
the
right.
one announcement. I don't want any comments how long my staff announcement stuff is. So good news on two fronts. We did cancel next week's work session. So yay, you have a free Wednesday night. That's the first part of good news. The reason we canceled it is it was to start looking at the street trust fund and if the funds weren't going to be able to get us all the way through. Deacon, Harry, and Lisa have sat and really run through the numbers, and we think we're still going to be okay. So that's the second part of the good news. So we think we're going to be okay. We're obviously going to continue to try to move some of the smaller ones up if we can, because the pace of construction costs the cost of construction will outpace the growth in sales tax. I do want to share though that we will have a small change for what we're doing this year. We were planning on, we're still doing Victoria. Like that's the big one that's going to get done. But we were also trying to sneak in La Vida. But when we take a look at 7th Street, which is out by North River, it is so bad. We just went out there and had to put road base. It's essentially at a gravel road at this point in time. They're very similar in cost. It was going to leave carryover funding. When we do 7th Street, we wanted to pair it with Alamosa Avenue, which is also in there, which if we move those both up, it prevents us from carrying over as much funding, which is what we want to do. We want to try to get as much. So we want to move 7th and Alamosa, and then La Vida would be next year still. So it's still happening very soon, but it allows us to get an extra street done that's designed and paired together. And they're both needed. So just wanted to let you know that change for this year. Oh, that's not all on my staff update. We are going to start doing education. I think we've had a few comments at council meetings. There's been some comments on Facebook, and you might have been hearing about some chatter on two different frustrations it seems that the community's having. The first one is some loud vehicles, and it's intentional modification of the vehicle, and it's pretty aggressive and obnoxious type of behavior. It does violate code or city ordinances. So we don't have to pass anything, but it's a tough one from an enforcement perspective. So what we are going to do is, one, we're going to make sure our officers are aware that this is a concern for the community. And if they're not in response to a different call and they experience it, then they can start, being encouraged to ticket for that. But the other is what the community can do, because obviously with 3 or 4 officers, they're not going to be everywhere these loud vehicles are at. So we're going to do education on what you can do as a community member, which is if you can get a license plate and describe the vehicle in a layman's terms, you don't need to know the year and the exact make and model. If you call the dispatch, not 911, and you give that to them, then an officer can come when they're not responding. They take the report. This city prosecutor is ready to prosecute it through municipal court. It doesn't involve points, but it is a disruption. You have to come to municipal court. It's a $50 fine. If you do a few of these, it can be community service and those types of things. And so we want to help the public understand what role they can play in helping to fight that, because we know it's a nuisance. The other education we're going to do is related to pedestrians and their right of way. Not just in the downtown, but throughout town. There doesn't even have to be a crosswalk, but if you have intersections, pedestrians technically have the right of way. And so we need to do more education, both for drivers and pedestrians. It doesn't mean just jump out in front of cars, but if there's a natural break, cars should be stopping. And I will say, I've gotten better of doing it maybe downtown. It feels weird to do it on First Street because I wasn't used to doing that. So it is a change in behavior that we need to start eliciting from drivers to recognize. And we want pedestrians. You don't want just empty streets full of concrete and nothing else. And so you want families and pedestrians walking around. And so we're going to be doing some of that kind of education as well. Again, with 3 or 4 officers, they're not going to necessarily be out ticketing people for not stopping. And so this is just something we need people to be good neighbors and be aware of, hey, I didn't realize when I'm driving down the street and there's a pedestrian rating, I just need to get in the habit of stopping type of thing. It's shouldn't have to be an enforcement issue. So we're going to be stepping those up here pretty soon. And with that, I have no more staff updates.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brooks. Thank you. All right, that brings us to the next thing on the agenda, local liquor licensing authority action. Needs and desires hearing for a new applicant.
Thank you, Mayor. So typically you turn that over to me to open up, which I will do, and I see our applicant is ready and raring to go. And in fact, the city clerk has a thick stack of petitions that were signed. And so what we'll do is the applicant will present what evidence they have for the needs and the desires of the neighborhood, looking like a liquor license should be issued for Lindo, Jalisco? Lindo, Jalisco. But let me start off just by having the city clerk confirm that the published notice for this hearing took place on December 24th. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then we'll get just out of the way from the applicant. You guys posted notice of the hearing on the building, I presume?
Yes, sir.
And when was that posted?
It was posted on November 22nd, 2022.
And did it stay posted up until yesterday or today or
Till
something?
today.
Very good. And if you want to present that, post the notice to the city clerk, we'll mark that as Exhibit A. And then just bring it over. And then we'll mark the petitions as Exhibit B. I didn't count how many pages are on that petition. Do you know?
I believe there were 3 or 4 of them.
There's 5 pages.
Oh, 5 pages for Exhibit B, and roughly how many signatures do you know?
I would say about over 200 signatures.
Okay.
250, I believe.
There's 195.
195.
My apologies.
Pretty darn close. So what we'll do is have you present to council what you want to say to council, and then open it up to the audience for anyone wishing to speak in favor of the issuance of the license. And after that, both local audience and remote audience will open it up for anyone wishing to speak against the license, and then turn it over to council who may have additional questions for you. So
Good.
go ahead.
Happy New Year's, council. Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful year so far. My name is Jose Lopez. I'm an owner here at a local restaurant named Lindo, Jalisco. We opened up on June 29th, 2022. It's been a great year so far, or half a year. We've been very successful, but the one lingering question that we get asked very frequently is, when will you guys have your liquor license? It comes up about 3-4 times a day. Me being a little bit of a procrastinator, I wasn't able to get the license out until Mrs. Martinez was able to help me out. And she helped me out through the process, helped me out with the paperwork. And I just wanted to come here and tell you guys our needs and our desires. Most of the community really supports our restaurant. We noticed from the beginning that the community responded very well. We've had a lot of support, and I believe we can have a little bit more of an opportunity to serve more community members. I had a couple, not a couple, but I have had a lot of people turn us away because we don't have a liquor license. And I just tell them, hey, give us about a year or so. We should have it sooner rather than later. And now I've taken the initiative to come apply for it. And we've had a lot of support and a lot of positive feedback. In front of you guys, we have had some people at the restaurant sign it. I've asked people that lived in Alamosa to sign it. They kind of got a little out of hand and some people from out of town wanted to sign it as well. But I do have most of them from Alamosa. I made sure that they were all 21 years or older. And I just kindly asked any customer that was at the restaurant, hey, we have this petition here. We'd greatly appreciate it if you guys would come and sign it if you guys were in favor. If not, we totally understand. But yeah, we've had a lot of people. We've built a beautiful bar. I don't know if many of you have been to the restaurant, but we have a beautiful bar. We'd like to use it and utilize it a little bit more. We have some amazing recipes. We have some really cool ideas that we want to bring into the city of Alamosa. We've had a significant impact when it comes to our dishes. A lot of people love the food there. They love taking pictures of it. The food is very photogenic, and I'm not speaking on just behalf of it being my business. It just, we take a lot of pride and a lot of dignity when we do our work and whenever we present our food to the public. We believe that everybody works very hard for their money, and we want to make sure that we present good quality food, a good environment, a good, just a good atmosphere for our customers. And we believe that if we do have the permission to have alcohol granted there, we can make it a little bit more funner. Of course, with fun, you have to make sure that you take initiative to take extra precautions to make sure that this does not end up in the hands of minors. Proper chaining would, of course, be initiated for our workers and our staff. I would be present there majority of the day. And especially now that we have alcohol, I could see if we do get the license, how much more of a responsibility I might have, or I'll need in order to be there a little bit more present and pretty much just enforce what we need to do in order to make sure that alcohol is provided to anyone 21 years or older. And I've talked about it to staff. I have eager staff. It will open up some new jobs, new opportunities for our restaurant. We obviously need a bartender, which would open up another position for our restaurant. And I think it would greatly help us out. Planning 2023 this year, we're actually planning on remodeling and cleaning up our patio. It's a little ugly. Not a little, it is pretty ugly. But we do have some good funds entering the year, and we plan on using that money in order to fix up the patio, make it a little bit more presentable, make it nicer, and just make the atmosphere a little bit more better. That way, anybody that's driving down 6th, if they look over to their left, they'll see a lot of people having fun outside and a lot of smiles, and maybe that'll have them stop by and give us a chance to make their day or feed them a nice warm meal. So yeah, and I think that should be about it. So.
Okay. Unless council has any questions, currently I will open it up for anybody wishing to comment in favor of issuance of this liquor license. Anybody from the audience? If anybody wishes to comment, they can come up and take a place at one of the microphones. I don't see anybody making their way forward, and so we'll ask if there's anybody on Zoom who wishes to comment in favor of the license, and so indicate by using the raise your hand feature. And there is a hand raised by Carl on Zoom.
Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I did not get a chance to sign the petition, but I have been to the restaurant a couple of times. And yeah, I agree. I think it'd be great if they had a liquor license and took advantage of the bar that they have.
Carl, can you state your first and last name for me, please, for the record?
Yeah, no problem. My name is Carl Denslow.
Thank you.
I don't see any other hands raised. I don't see anyone else coming forward. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to comment in opposition to issuance of this liquor license in the audience? And no one's making their way forward for that. Anyone wishing to comment in opposition to issuance of this license on Zoom? If so, use the raise your hand feature. And nobody is wishing to comment, so I'll close the public hearing and turn it back over to council then for any questions that they may have of the applicant or other comments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sweetsall. Looks like we have a lot of lights lit up. So I don't know who started first. I'll start. How about I go from here to there? Okay, and then I'll go back here. Okay, I know you just did yours. We'll start with Councilor Griego and we'll work our way back. Okay, is that good? All right, good. Ms. Cripps, can you turn your light off real quick? There you go. There you go.
Okay. I've had an opportunity to go to your place. You did a beautiful job in remodeling. The food is good. And what is going to be your operation hours? And when will you sell alcohol? And can you give us an idea?
You can turn the mic back on by pushing a button. There you go.
All right, sorry about that, guys.
No worries.
So our operating hours are from 11 to 9 o'clock or so. Every day excluding Tuesdays, some holidays. But if we do get the liquor license, that would allow us to stay open a little bit later, potentially play games. A lot of people have come in late at night trying to watch the Broncos, Avalanche games, any sports. We do have a couple televisions in the bar area where it's a little bit easily accessible to play any sports, and that potentially allow us to stay a little bit later. And so yeah, it'd be from 11 to 9 or potentially 11 to 10 in the summer hours as well. So
Thank you. Good presentation.
thank you.
Councilor Vio.
Thank you, Mayor. Is your father Jose Lopez?
Yes.
Okay, so just for council, everybody, I fully support this liquor license. I believe I worked with your father at Chili's a long time ago.
Yeah. Yes.
And he's a very hardworking man. Their location in Monte Vista is top notch. They serve great food. And if I'm wrong, council, but the previous restaurant there, Miss Rivera's, that also had a liquor license there. So I think this is a no-brainer. It helps us on 6th Street there, cleaning up some stuff and making it look presentable and that. So I'm all for this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Councilor Hensley.
So I also have a lot of background in the restaurant business and 100% supportive. I've also been in your restaurant quite a few times with my family. Great food. You've done a great job with what you've done there. I also think that it does make a difference for those who wanted to be able to have a drink or two with their meal. I also know from running a restaurant that whether it's alcoholic drinks or non-alcoholic drinks, those drinks make a difference in your profitability in that business, which those things make a difference. I do have one question. So in the idea of being responsible in serving, I know you say obviously having yourself be there and then obviously that bartender, will you do some training for your staff and things like that in the sense of being able to, that they know when to card people and things like that?
Yes, ma'am. So I've actually bartended at Calvillo's a while back. That's when I first started to understand that side of business. And like you said, it is very, very profitable. When it comes to alcohol, I think your profit margins are the largest when it comes to there. As you can tell, if you guys were to go out to any local business, their alcohol will make up a vast majority of their income that allows them to be a little bit more profitable, a little bit more flexible. And I mean, when I was working as a bartender, when I was making drinks, I started seeing the bottles, how much portions were. And I started noticing that one bottle maybe costs you about $10, $12. And we were selling shots at Calvillo's for about $6. So I was very shocked that with 2 ounces, you paid for a whole bottle, and the rest of the bottle, you can make some more profit. And it's a very, very large margin in which you can be very successful at. Of course, you do have to have a little bit of knowledge and you're supposed to be very responsible with it. So with us, we of course take the proper steps into training. I also have a family member that has worked at other restaurants as well. And the one thing that he mentioned was that when it comes to training staff correctly, there's a thin line or it's not a very thin line, it's a very bold line and it's yes or no. You're either 21 and you have proof of it, or you don't and you don't get any alcohol. And we will go by those rules, and I'll make sure that we take excessive training, take it very serious. And since I will be there most of the time, I'm 100% guaranteeing that I'll be on top of it. And starting off, most likely I'll probably be the bartender. I'll be a little bit more, a little bit firmer when it comes to checking IDs, making sure that my servers, that my staff understand the actions that we need to take in order to serve this, because it's not a right. You don't have the right to serve alcohol. It's a permission. And like I said, we will definitely take the right course in the right direction to train our staff correctly and make sure that that doesn't happen with us. So yeah.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Cripps, and then Counselor Carson, and then Counselor Daniel.
I think I'm just joining the crowd here. I have dined at your restaurant. It's very good. And I'm very happy to see you taking the initiative to be responsible, try to build the business up and making it successful here in the city. So thank you so much for that. And I look forward to visiting it again.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Counselor Daniel, thank you, Counselor Cripps.
Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome.
So I was looking at the drawing in the thing, and it says, and what our findings tell us is that the licensed premise is proposed to be the entirety of the interior of the structure at said address, but it also includes the patio. And so I didn't know, because the patio was closed in, is it also for the patio outside? I know we've had different conversations, like with locavores, they had to have the extra drawing. And so because it says the interior on our fact finding, I just wanted to clarify that. Or in the applicant details in the council communication, I apologize. Everything is colored on the drawing, but that is not what it says in our council communication. So I just wanted to make sure we were clear.
No, so the drawing that he did submit does not include the patio. So if you do want to include the patio, just bring me a updated drawing and we could get that sent off to the state before they approve.
Okay.
If
Sounds good.
council approves it, but they'll have to do an approval with that modification for the patio.
Sounds good. All right, perfect.
Thank you for that. I really do appreciate that you sound like you're very committed to the training and support. And we've had lots of conversations about the amount of alcohol that is available within our city limits. I think as a council, we've discussed many times having alcohol available at a restaurant is different than adding another liquor store. And so the expectation I think that we have is that it really is clear about the carding and the rules and ensuring your staff stays up to date on that. Because it's so easily accessible, we have to be that much more careful. And I think that that is just really important. I appreciate what you're sharing about your diligence and everything like that. So thank you for that. And I think the tips training, and there are serve safe trainings, there are other trainings available, but I would recommend not just having people train your staff, but actually going through a true certification program and making sure that your staff is actually certified in checking those IDs and understanding that. And if you haven't had it in a while, getting that kind of certification, that just makes it safer for everyone in our community. So thank you very much for that. And then I had a question about it is located within 500 feet of a school, but an ordinance, can we talk about that a little bit, that there's an ordinance in the city that already took care of that?
Yeah, and I did relook at the drawing, so it does already include the patio, so it is on there. So the patio is in the drawing. And the ordinance that we passed, I don't know it off the top of my head, but we did do a distance to exempt TSC from the distance restriction.
Thank you. I was trying to figure out what the school was and I
Yep,
could, so thank
it's
you for that.
PSC.
Wonderful. Those are the only questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Daniel. And Mr. Lopez, thank you for coming up here tonight. I also have eaten at your restaurant several times. I have to commend you on the professionalism, the delicious food, and your staff, and you're constantly in communication with your earpieces in and talking to them and making sure your food is delivered on time. So I really acknowledge you for running a really successful business. And you had a choice to open your business anywhere in the valley, but you chose Alamosa. And we appreciate you choosing our city to open up your business, and we wish you much continued success.
Thank you, sir. And thank you guys for having us here. It's been a long journey, but we kind of have already, we've always had our sites open, mine and my family's business. We've always wanted to stay here in the valley. We were very eager to get here a couple years ago. 2019, we were actually going to try to purchase a building from Andy. I think he's the gentleman that owns the St. Ives building. Unfortunately, COVID happened. So that was kind of a sign that maybe we weren't as ready to step into that. And then a couple years later, we were able to negotiate something with Tim Rivera. And that's when we purchased the building there on 6th Street. And like I said, it's been a really wonderful journey. It's been a blessing. And like I said, the community here is really amazing and we really enjoy it. And now we're just really happy to be here and we appreciate all the support from everybody. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Mayor,
Okay, yes.
this is a little out of the ordinary, but your talk about the work with the patio, have you connected with Kathy on the facade grant?
That is the grant with where it's I believe they match or they do half of
Yeah, up to
yes, yes.
5. Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
Mrs. Woods has actually reached out to me. We got all the paperwork
Perfect.
finished. But we're actually waiting on seeing what else we can do. I know we've painted the outside of it and hopefully here in the near future, I'm going to be working with Mr. Copley and see what other permits we'll need to pull in order to lay down our concrete for a patio and fix up the I believe it's the west part of the patio, the outdoor seating. We want to demo that and I know I'll need to get my license for that as well. And then once we demo that, we'll definitely be putting down concrete and I'm a little bit familiar with the steps now. So yeah, it'll be, she has gotten a hold of me as well. So yeah.
Good. I just wanted to make sure. I had no doubt that she probably had.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
guys.
Okay, Council. Council Griego.
So we clarified as far as the patio, it's in the license, right? What I'd like to do is make a motion that we waive the period of where we just bring back the pro and con and go ahead and pass this license this evening.
Councilor Griego, you've been a counselor too long. We we stopped doing that 3-4 years ago.
I'm just refreshing your mind.
Okay.
Well, then I'll make the motion. We do this license.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, if not, please start voting.
It's less than 1/10 of your tenure, so it probably doesn't register.
Okay, we got one missing. There we go.
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, that brings us down to council comments. Counselor Beal.
Thank you, Mayor. I got two things. First is, and I'm sure everybody's starting to hear this really sad news is, I want to offer my condolences and prayers to the family of Eric Malgoza. He was the girls' basketball coach, AD, and assistant principal at Alamosa High School. He was a friend of mine. It's a big loss for our community. A great man, a man of character, man of faith. So just prayers for him and his family. And then congratulations to Mr. Griego for being our mayor pro tem. And what was said about Miss Daniels about letting it go after a year. That's awesome. That's leadership. Thank you. And I want to acknowledge Miss Hensley, who kind of started this tradition of letting it go after 2 years and she let me take it and then I gave it up. So I think I'm proud to be a part of a team that's doing that. And I hope that stays tradition long after we're gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Vihil. Any other comments? Oh, Counselor Henson?
I'll just say really quick, obviously it's back to school time for all the kids. Some started obviously this week, some in other areas will start next week. And then we got all the colleges starting. So just looking forward to a great back to school for all the kids and Happy New Year to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor Hensley. Counselor Griego?
A couple of things, couple emails from CML, the legislative workshop on February the 16th. We're still signing up. We're signed up for that, or you got to call in.
If you haven't let me know to register you, you need to let me know.
And because of that, we will be having a resolution to cancel that second meeting in February because some of us will be traveling that night.
And also the CML come up with the home rule handbook. That's something that we can get that, or is that a revised edition or something? Is it?
Yes, it's a revised edition, so they always give us a couple copies and we usually order a couple more. So we'll have a number of copies. And if any counselor in particular wants a copy, I'm sure that if you get with Holly, she can arrange that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mayor.
Counselor Griego. Counselor Daniel?
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
So yes, I'm excited for Counselor Griego and thank you for all of the kind words that were said earlier. I really appreciate that. I cannot believe it's 2023. The team has worked so hard in 2022, all of the things that were accomplished. We got to see in that project management meeting, all of the things that are planned. So team, you have your work cut out for you, but it's really exciting stuff that we're doing for the community. So thank you for that. I did want to let everyone know that Valleywide Health Systems will be providing mental health first aid training. And so mental health first aid training is a skills-based training for anyone who works with people at all or comes into contact with people at any time. So really for all of us, right? Just like regular first aid. And so that training will be available at least once a month for the rest of this year. And so I'll be sending that information out to be shared to make sure everyone has access and can apply or it's not an application, can come to the training. It is at a really reduced cost and something that Valleywide has been committed to. And I think we've talked a lot about mental health concerns as a council. And so I wanted to announce it here for you all as well, to let you know that that training is available for any of us who want to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Daniel. Okay, I don't see any more lights on, so I'll just wrap things up. I'd like to wish everyone a happy and prosperous new year. And like Counselor Vihil said, all of our thoughts and prayers go out to Mr. Melgoza. You know, it's a sad situation, but I always try to think about the good things about a person when they pass away. And the thing I remember the most about Mr. Melgoza is that he loved those kids at the school. He was at just about every activity in town, out of town. I saw him one time at Texas Roadhouse with a group of soccer players, and he's always happy and just really loved the kids. So our thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family. Okay, that's it. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.